Hello, and welcome back to our podcast. I'm the Disturbed Southern Belle.
And I'm the gentleman.
We're continuing our series of some of the old story or dark tales, so to speak, of old Hollywood and the different actors and actresses that were impacted, so to speak. So on this episode, we're going to be talking about a little actress named Bette Davis. So she was born as Ruth Elizabeth Davis in 1908, and as many know, she's like a legendary movie star. She was known as a tireless perfectionist and a workaholic. She had little patience for those who do not share her vision, and consequently, her 1962 autobiography, The Lonely Life, and its 1987 follow-up, This and That, are not short of opinions. And many are very hard-edged, but there are a few that could be considered, remarkably tender, considering who they're coming from. As her autobiographies prove, there was so much more to Davis's wild life even than what we saw in 2007's Feud, which was a show that charted her fabled dispute with co-star Joan Crawford. They had like this famous feud, so to speak.
Right.
So much of Davis's life could be seen as a rebuke to her father, Harlow, who was known as a stern, Harvard-trained patent lawyer whom she could never please. She says she saw in a reverie, I sat in a reverie staring at the stars. The sky was silver with them, she wrote in The Lonely Life. I was bewitched. Daddy was sitting with me and says, you see all those stars up there? There are millions and millions of them. Remember that always, and you'll know how unimportant you are. So,
Jesus, that's a thing to tell a child.
Yeah. Davis was, and I'm going to hope that maybe he didn't mean it as in like, You're
useless. You don't matter.
Right. I'm hoping it's more like just saying in the big scheme of life, none of us mean a lot, in the scheme of the universe itself, perhaps. And maybe he just didn't know how to word things properly. But anyway, Davis would set out to prove him wrong and everyone else wrong, including her eternal nemesis, Warner Brothers studio head Jack Warner. And of course, Crawford, whom she accused of being a vain, vodka and Pepsi-swilling, skilled sexual politician. She insisted on her sets being freezing and her nails being perfect. I've always been driven by some distant music, a battle hymn, no doubt, for I have been at war from the beginning, Davis wrote. I rode into the field with sword gleaming and standard flying. I was going to conquer the world. So, as I said, her name was Ruth Elizabeth Davis when she on birth, and she was born in the midst of a storm in Lowell, Massachusetts. I happened between a clap of thunder and a streak of lightning, Davis wrote in The Lonely Life. It almost hit the house and destroyed a tree out front. As a child, I fancied that the finger of God was directing the attention of the world to me. Further in divine proof from the stump of that tree that one should never point. So, yeah, I guess so. From her earliest childhood, Davis was a force of nature. She was able to bend people and places to her will, and as a young girl, she and her sister Bobby were sent for a time to Crestabon, a progressive girls' boarding school in the Berkshire Hills. Here, sans electricity, they slept outdoors on a sleeping porch and took naked snow baths every morning, which Davis recalled as my greatest delight. That don't sound like a great delight, but
it doesn't. But I guess to each their own.
There you go. At the school's annual holiday festivities, Davis always played Santa Claus. One year, she got too close to the candles which lit the Christmas tree as she tried to find her presents dressed in her highly flammable costume. She described the scene. Suddenly I was on fire. I started screaming in terror. I heard voices, felt myself being wrapped in a rug, and then silence all around me. Everyone was quite naturally panicked. When the rug was taken off, I decided to keep my eyes closed. Ever the actress, I would make believe I was blind. Her eyes! A shudder of delight went through me. I was in complete command of the moment. I've never known such power. Oh, good grief, right? This power and drive would inform everything that she did, from winning sorority debates to organizing a girls' football team or getting the lead in the senior play. Davis was obsessed with excelling. I became the most dedicated Girl Scout that ever lived. I would have tripped an old lady in order to help pick her up, she wrote. I also became a patrol leader. I worked my patrol like a top sergeant. Okay.
Just going.
I'm afraid I developed the reputation of one. So behind all this success was this unshakable belief in one important thing, which was herself. I always felt special, part of a wonderful secret. I was going to be somebody, she wrote. It seems there was no one Davis loved more than her mother, Ruthie. If I could never win my father, I completely conquered Ruthie. She remembers in The Lonely Life. I became an absolute despot at the age of 2. Through sheer terror, Ruthie surrendered. I sensed her weaknesses early and pounced on them. But Davis also admired her mother enormously. She was made of so much and so many things, my mother. Brutal honesty and silly deceits, self-indulgence and endless sacrifices, love and loyalty and that abundance of joy of living. After her parents divorced when she was 7, Ruthie, Bobby, and Betty became adventuring nomads. Ruthie, bucking her patriarchal New England roots, went to school to become a photographer, and she moved the girls to a shabby apartment in New York City. Her 2 snobby daughters were horrified by their new home and the poverty they found themselves now living in. But Ruthie always found a way to make life magical. After dinner, Mother would pass some candy around, turn out the lights, and pull up all our shades. Presto, we had front row seats to a vaudeville show for free. Davis wrote of their voyeuristic nights. A la Rear Window, she called them. We rocked with laughter. Ruthie had made our dreary place into the first box at the palace. After Davis became a star, Ruthie settled into the life of a grand dame at her home in Laguna Beach, California, which she dubbed Freedom Hall. She, who had worked for me like a demon, had known no sacrifice great enough, now relaxed into luxury, Davis wrote. Ruthie, she became my daughter, a spoiled, enchanting little girl, and to her death in 1961, Ruthie never stopped supporting her difficult daughter, and Davis was grateful. The dedication for The Lonely Life reads, "For Ruthie, who will always be in the front row." Davis could be remarkably kind about other actors. She admired her friends like Joan Blondell and Olivia de Havilland. She worshipped Italian actor Anna Magnani and admitted to being jealous of Katharine Hepburn. Both were staunch, driven Yankees, and both would have affairs with Howard Hughes. She was fearful of working with Maggie Smith and recalled sputtering to stage star Ruth Chatterton during their first scene together. "I'm so damn scared of you, I'm speechless," which is odd for her to say, I'm going to say.
It kind of is.
She's not known to be that way. So despite her pugnacious reputation, Davis also wasn't always the aggressor when she did butt heads. When I first met Tallulah Bankhead, she said, "So you're the woman who does all the parts on the screen, and I do them so much better," Davis recalls in The Lonely Life. "I agree with you, Miss Bankhead," I replied. So people were not kind to her either. So, in fact, in the autobiography This and That, Davis somewhat disingenuously claims that she only despised the 2 of her female co-stars. "In all my years as an actress, I have only criticized 2 actresses with whom I have worked," she wrote. "The first is Miriam Hopkins, and the second is Faye Dunaway, whose name is most appropriate. Several times I wished I could have done away with her. Any race for witchery features Miss Hopkins and Miss Dunaway would have definitely end up in a tie." So Davis and Hopkins first crossed paths in the 1928 play Excess Baggage, directed by George Cukor. So Hopkins was the star and Davis merely a supporting actress. Miriam was the prettiest golden-haired blonde I had ever seen, she wrote in The Lonely Life. She was the envy of us all. The envy was only heightened in Hollywood and not helped by the fact that Davis reportedly had an affair with the director, Anatoly Livkak, Hopkins' husband, which was a fact that Davis fails to mention in either of her books. When the 2 reunited in 1939 for the film The Old Maid, Davis was now the star, and according to her, Hopkins did everything she could to upstage her. "In the first place, she never looked at me," she recalled in The Lonely Life. Her restless little spirit was impatiently awaiting her next line, her golden curls quivering with expectancy. Once In a two-shot favoring both of us, her attempts to upstage me almost collapsed the couch we were sitting on. Davis would always admit that Hopkins was a good actress. She did not feel the same about Dunaway, though, with whom she worked with in 1976's The Disappearance of Amy. Miss Dunaway was without a doubt the most impossible co-star I've worked with. She was never on time, never knew her lines, Davis remembers in This and That. She had a fondness for riding around town all night in a chauffeur-driven limousine, sipping champagne in the back seat. According to Davis, during one large scene in an auditorium, Dunaway was a no-show. So Davis got on stage and performed "I've Written a Letter to Daddy," a number from the 1962's Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, to entertain the antsy extras. "I can imagine no circumstances under which I would work again with Miss Dunaway," she wrote in This and That. It is possible she feels the same about me, but I believe I have the stronger claim. Davis could be equally complimentary and dismissive of her male counterparts. She loved Jimmy Stewart, James Cagney, Spencer Tracy, Charles Boyer, and Claude Rains, and was amused by Errol Flynn. She admired also Marlon Brando. She had a passionate affair with frequent co-star George Brent, who had an infectious giggle, she says. And she had a long-term crush on Henry Fonda, whom she had known since her summer stock days. During the filming of Jezebel in 1937, he took off to attend to the birth of his first child, Davis recalls in This and That. As a result, all my close-ups and scenes with him were played to a strange voice and a stick with a round piece of wood and face painted on it. I've long forgiven him for this, since that baby turned out to be Jane Fonda. But overall, Davis, who would only marry one actor, Gary Merrill, her co-star in All About Eve, and the fourth of her four husbands, had a rather dismal view of her vain male counterparts. Most of Hollywood's glamour boys spent their lives ensuring their place in the safety of the producer's arms and the hearts of the public. The masculine ego, outsized at birth, takes on gargantuan proportions in the actor, she wrote in The Lonely Life. His world is a small one, bound on the north by his own Polaris and on the south by his own twinkling toes. So, okay. She thought a lot of him, in other words. Of Alec Guinness's, her co-star in 1959's The Scapegoat, she wrote, "This is an actor who plays by himself, unto himself. In this particular picture, he played a dual role, so at least he was able to play with himself." A lifelong Democrat who worshipped FDR and the Kennedys, Davis heaped particular shade on little Ronnie Reagan, her co-star in Dark Victory. Musing in This and That, in light of today's witch hunts, when all political figures are targets, it's amazing that President Reagan does not have something in his past to be revealed. It must mean that he was as dull as his first wife, Jane Wyman, said he was. So, okay.
Quite possible.
Elizabeth Tudor was right. She ruled alone. I'm afraid I am a queen with all the prerogatives of that station, Davis wrote in The Lonely Life. The people who call you a driving female will come along for the ride. If they weigh you down, you will fight them off. It is then that you're called a bitch. Fair enough.
Fair enough.
Nicknamed Mother Goddamn in Hollywood and La Lupe, the she-wolf in Spain, Davis
That was fun.
would stay herself throughout 4 tumultuous marriages, 3 children, and dozens of films. After a mastectomy followed by a stroke in the early 1980s, she worried whether she would be the same. To one old and close friend, I confided, "After a stroke, you have a very short fuse with people," she wrote in This and That. My friend then replied, "Betty, you've always had a short fuse with people. Don't blame it on your stroke." She also kept her sense of humor, participating in the 1982 television event Night of 100 Stars. She found herself sharing a dressing room with movie stars Alice Faye, who had flown to New York City from her Palm Springs home, Lillian Gish, June Allison, Ginger Rogers, and Joan Collins. Always an eager voyeur, she was in stitches with what she saw. We were hysterical watching Lillian Gish, who is definitely from another world, looking at Joan Collins, probably thinking just bosoms and hair and no talent. Alice kept saying over and over, "Why did I leave my barbecue pit to be tortured like this?" But there was sadness as well. In 1985, Davis's eldest daughter, B.D. Hyman, a born-again Christian, wrote a takedown called My Mother's Keeper, similar to Christina Crawford's Mommy Dearest. Davis was heartbroken, but also acid. And this and that, she wrote a scathing open letter to her daughter and said, "Hope someday I will understand the title, my mother's keeper. If it refers to money, my memory serves me right. I've been your keeper all these years. I'm continuing to do so, so my name has made your book about me a success." So, mother and daughter never reconciled, and Betty Davis died on October 6, 1989. She was buried with her beloved Ruthie and Bobby at Forest Lawn in Los Angeles. Her self-chosen epitaph sums up her life with perfect succiness. She did it the hard way. So here's a few just interesting facts about her. So she got her start on stage after developing an interest in acting at finishing school at the Cushing Academy in Massachusetts. However, when she applied in 1928 to take classes in New York with renowned director and actress Ava DeLaGallian, the latter rejected her as a frivolous little girl. She then became a star pupil at John Murray Anderson's dramatic school and joined a stock theater company operated by George Cukor, who would later direct dozens of Hollywood hits. In 1929, she earned rave reviews for the Broadway hit Broken Dishes. The following year, a scout for Universal Studios saw her in Solid South and invited her to screen test. Her first Hollywood screen test did not go very well. She arrived in Hollywood with her mother, but the studio representative set to meet her at the train left because he claimed not to see anyone who looked like an actress. Like that nice.
Yeah, really, though.
A movie executive watched one of the screen tests and announced that she had no sex appeal. In others, she was rejected because of her crooked teeth. She even once recalled fleeing the room screaming after seeing herself on screen. Universal eventually offered her a contract, but she was given only small forgettable roles. She was preparing to return to New York when Warner Brothers offered her a contract, and then she was on her way to stardom. She soon developed a reputation for, we'll say, being strong-willed. Although she got better parts with Warner Brothers and was the studio's first Best Actress Academy Award winner, she became frustrated with the male stars getting better opportunities. She also hated the studio deciding when and where she could work, and in 1936 she went to the UK to make 2 films, a move that caused Warner Brothers to sue her for breach of contract. She ultimately lost the case and returned to Hollywood. However, the case did lead to her getting more respect with a new contract from Warner Brothers and better roles. One of her most memorable later roles was in a movie 1962's Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. The feud between her and co-star Joan Crawford was mirrored by their on-screen loathing of one another. And you can really see it. I've seen the movie.
Yeah.
Crawford had been married to a Pepsi executive and was on the company's board. So Davis, what did she do? She insisted on having a Coke machine being installed in her dressing room during production.
Fair enough.
Among other episodes, by some accounts, Davis hit Crawford so hard in one scene that it required for Crawford to have stitches.
Jesus.
Davis was nominated for an Academy Award, but Crawford actively campaigned against her. It was Crawford who accepted the Oscar on awards night on behalf of Anne Bancroft, who could not be there in person to accept it. In later years, both actresses spoke of their respect for each other, although Davis continued to criticize Crawford's vanity. Davis is one of 2 actresses with 5 consecutive Academy Award nominations. She shares the honor with Greer Garson, who beat Davis to win for Mrs. Miniver in 1942. In 1962, she became the first person to be nominated for 10 Oscars, a feat surpassed only by Meryl Streep, Katharine Hepburn, and Jack Nicholson. That's a big thing.
That is a really big thing.
A write-in campaign for her part in Of Human Bondage in 1934 adds another unofficial nomination. She won the Best Actress Award for Dangerous in 1935 and Jezebel in 1938. And a win for Whatever Happened to Baby Jane would have made her the first 3-time winner in a non-supporting category. But in 1977, she became the 5th and first female recipient of the Lifetime Achievement Award from the American Film Institute. The award is given to a performer whose work has stood the test of time. In announcing her as the winner, the AFI She is the rarest of creatures, the consummate professional. By the 1970s, she was still doing movies, including Death on the Nile in 1978. She was also taking more television roles, and she continued to act through the 80s, despite a stroke and breast cancer. Her final role with fellow Hollywood veteran Lillian Gish in The Wells of August in 1987. Davis died in France, of course, 2 years later. So, very interesting.
Very interesting and very full life, I guess.
Oh, yeah. Now, she was definitely one that they said wouldn't put up with any crap. And I can't necessarily say I blame her because she came from a time where women were pushed around a lot and expected just to kind of fall in line.
Oh, absolutely.
So, the fact that she stood up for herself, of course, they're going to call her a bitch. They still do that today. And sometimes it's not necessarily somebody being a bitch. It's just saying, hey, you're not going to just walk all over me.
Yep.
Now, I'm not saying that's always the case. Some people are just, they are bitches.
But it is a case.
But it can be. So, anyway, we hope you enjoyed that segment. Don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe. And don't forget to stay disturbed.